Hey, howdy everybody, welcome to episode 1, technically, I guess, of Skyrim Story Hour. I'm gonna do this kind of as like a side quest sort of thing, you could call it, I suppose, to the main series. So I just finished episode 7 a couple days back, and this is going to be episode 7.5, as you can see. So I'm going to do like little 0.5 episodes kind of in between some episodes where I just read some books. So this is going to be the first of those. So I'm going to check out some of the books that I haven't read yet. It's just going to be me reading books and going through some of the lore. I have like a list of all the books I've already read, went back and checked all my episodes. So I'm going to go through some of the books that I haven't read, and then as I go through the game, collect more books, I'll do more of these episodes when I feel like I have a good number of books that I want to read. So the books that I've read, I will give to Lydia, and then the books that I haven't read, I got something red here. It's not a pimple though. I don't know what it is. The books I have read, I'm going to give to Lydia, and then I'm going to keep the unread books for myself. And I'll just kind of go through those and then give them to her as I'm finished with them, so I know that I'm finished, and then I can sell them from there. So we'll see. Alrighty. Maybe I should do the opposite so that I know, or so that I can actually sell them, because I don't think Lydia can sell. Whatever. It doesn't matter. That's something I can figure out later. Okay, let's get into this. Okay, so the books that I have read are Book of the Dragonborn, Gentleman's Guide to Whiterun, Line and Lure, Brief History of the Empire Volume 1 and 2, Blessings of Sheogorath, Saints and Seducers, Third Era and Abbreviated Timeline, Herbalist's Guide to Skyrim, The Holds of Skyrim, Lady Bennock's First Word in Philosophy, Olaf and the Dragon, Black Arrow Volume 2, Lost Legends of Skyrim, Argonian Account Volume 1, A Game at Dinner, which is my favorite book that I've read so far, and A Kiss, Sweet Mother. Okay, I also remember that I started to read Thief, but it said, hey, read Beggar first, and I believe that this is Beggar, I'm assuming. Maybe, because it says Beggar Prince. I don't know. But I think I tossed the book Thief that I had, which is unfortunate, so I'll have to try to remember where I put those and grab it, because I believe things in this world, just as you drop them, they just stay there, because that's the Bethesda way. But we'll see if that's the Beggar book it was talking about, but we'll see. Okay, so I have in here Brief History of the Empire Volume 3. I own that, but here's all 4 volumes. So I'm actually going to start with Volume 3, and I will read this and Volume 4 to finish off A Brief History of the Empire. I'm assuming that that is all the volumes, because they are all here in this nice, concise little 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. All right. Here we go. Pull up a chair, pull up a drink, just sit and enjoy some stories. The first volume of this series told in brief the story of the succession of the first 8 emperors of the Septim dynasty, from Tiber I to Kintira the second. The second volume described the War of the Red Diamond and the 6 emperors that followed its aftermath, from Uriel III to Cassinda I. At the end of that volume, it was described how the Emperor Cassinda's half-brother Uriel IV assumed the throne of the Empire of Tamriel. It'll be recalled that Uriel IV was not a Septim by birth. I do remember that, yeah. His mother, though she reigned as empress for many years, was a dark elf, married to a true Septim emperor, Pelagius III. Uriel's father was actually Catariah I's consort after Pelagius' death, a Breton nobleman named Galavir Lariat. Before taking the throne of Empire, Cassinda I had ruled the kingdom of Wayrest, but poor health had forced him to retire. Cassinda had no children, so he illegally adopted his half-brother Uriel and abdicated the kingdom. 7 years later, Cassinda inherited the empire at the death of his mother. 3 years after that, Uriel once again found himself the recipient of Cassinda's inheritance. I need a drink of water. Uriel IV's reign was a long and difficult one. Despite being the legally adopted member of the Septim family, and despite the Lariat family's high position, indeed they were distant cousins of the Septims, few of the Elder Council could be persuaded to accept him fully as a blood descendant of Tiber. The council had assumed much responsibility during Catariah I's long reign and Cassinda I's short one, and a strong-willed alien monarch like Uriel IV found it impossible to command their unswerving fealty. Time and again the council and emperor were at odds, and time and again the council won the battles. Since the days of Pelagius II, the Elder Council had consisted of the wealthiest men and women in the empire, and the power they wielded was conclusive. The council's last victory over Uriel IV was posthumous. Andorra, that's after he died, right? Posthumous? That means after he died? Let me double check. Yes, I was correct. Okay, just wanted to make sure. Andorak, Uriel IV's son, was disinherited by a vote of council, and a cousin more closely related to the original septum line was proclaimed Sepphoris II in the Third Era 247. For the first 9 years of Sepphoris II's reign, those loyal to Andorak battled the imperial forces. In an act that the sage Arantine called Tiber Septim's heart beating no more, the council granted Andorak the High Rock Kingdom of Shornhelm, to end the war, and Andorak's descendants still rule there. By and large, Sepphoris II had foes that demanded more of his attention than Andorak. From out of a Cimmerian... Bro... Can my eyes work? From out of a Cimmerian nightmare, we're gonna pretend that didn't happen. By and large, Sepphoris II had You're right, level up is available, and I forgot to do that. 1 second. Give me more health. Sure. Okay, cool. Anyway, Brief History of the Empire, Volume 3. By and large, Sepphoris II had foes that demanded more of his attention than Andorak. From out of a Cimmerian nightmare, in the words of Arantine, a man who called himself the Camorian usurper, led an army... From out of a Cimmerian nightmare, in the words of Arantine, a man who had From out of a Cimmerian nightmare, in the words of Arantine, a man who called himself the Camorian usurper led an army of Daedra and undead warriors on a rampage through Valenwood, conquering kingdom after kingdom. The syntax of that sentence was weird. Few could resist his onslaughts, and as months turned to bloody month in the year 3 era, how do you say that? Like, you say third era? Third era 249? Even fewer tried. Sepphoris II sent more and more mercenaries into Hammerfell to stop the usurper's northward march, but they were bribed or slaughtered and raised as undead. The story of the Cameron usurper deserves a book of its own. It is recommended that the reader find Palo Ilthre... See, the I and the L's look the same. The reader find Palo Ilthre's The Fall of the Usurper for more detail. In short, however, the destruction of the forces of the usurper had little to do with the efforts of the emperor. The result was a great regional victory and an increase in hostility toward the seemingly inefficacious empire. Inefficacious. I can't say that word. Inefficacious empire. I don't think I've ever heard that version of the word. Like, I know the word in inefficacy, but like inefficacious, something that is inefficacy. I can't. Moving on. Uriel V, Sepphoris II's son and successor. This is going great so far, guys. This is the best I've ever read in my life, probably. Uriel V, Sepphoris II's son and successor, swiveled opinion back toward the latent power of the empire. Dude, why can I not read today? What's going on? Is this just not a good time to record a Skyrim story time? Who cares? Starting over. Uriel V, Sepphoris II's son and successor, swiveled opinion back toward the latent power of the empire. Turning the attention of Tamriel away from internal strife, Uriel V embarked on a series of invasions beginning almost from the moment he took the throne in the Third Era 268. Uriel V conquered Roscria in 271, Canthoque in 276, Vinesla in 279, and Esrionet in 284. In the Third Era 288, he embarked on his most ambitious enterprise, the invasion of the continent kingdom of Akavir. This ultimately proved a failure, for 2 years later, Uriel V was killed in Akavir on the battlefield of Ionith. Nevertheless, Uriel V holds a reputation second only to Tiber as one of the 2 great warrior emperors of Tamriel. The last 4 emperors, beginning with Uriel V's infant son, are described in the 4th and final volume of the series. And that's what we're going to read now with volume 4. Let me get a drink so I can... Oh, I'm also slightly sick, so that doesn't help. But just slightly. Oh geez, oh gosh, okay. This is... I guess it's good stuff to know, but I'm not retaining very much of this because it's just info dump. But it's good to read, I suppose. So it's a good thing for an episode like this where I can just read and not worry about, like, so much other than reading. The first book of this series described in brief the first 8 emperors of the Septim dynasty, beginning with Tiber I. The second volume described the War of the Red Diamond and the 6 emperors who followed. The third volume described the troubles of the next 3 emperors, the frustrated Uriel IV, the ineffectual Sepphoris II, and the heroic Uriel V. On Uriel V's death across the sea in distant hostile Akavir, Uriel VI was but 5 years old. In fact, Uriel VI was born only shortly before his father left for Akavir. Uriel V's only other progeny, by a more genetic alliance, were the twins of Morihatha and Eloisa, who had been born a month after Uriel V left. Uriel VI was crowned in the 290th year of the Third Era. The imperial consort, Thonica, as the boy's mother, was given a restricted regency until Uriel VI reached his majority. The Elder Council retained the real power, as they had ever since the days of Catariah I. The Council so enjoyed its unlimited and unrestricted freedom to promulgate laws and generate profits that Uriel VI was not given full license to rule until 307, when he was already 22 years old. He had been slowly assuming positions of responsibility for years, but both the council and his mother, who enjoyed even her limited regency, were loath to hand over the reins. By the time he had come to the throne, the mechanisms of government gave him little power except for that of the imperial veto. This power, however, he regularly and vigorously exercised. By 313, Uriel VI could boast with conviction that he truly did rule Tamriel. He utilized defunct spy networks and guard units to bully and coerce the difficult members of the Elder Council. His half-sister Morihatha was, not surprisingly, his staunchest ally, especially after her marriage to Baron Ulf Gerson of Winterhold brought her considerable wealth and influence. As the sage Ugarij said, Uriel V conquered Esfrionet, but Uriel VI conquered the Elder Council. When Uriel VI fell off a horse and could not be resuscitated by the finest imperial healers, his beloved sister Morihatha took up the imperial tiara. 25 years of age, she had been described by admittedly self-serving diplomats as the most beautiful creature in all of Tamriel. She was certainly well-learned, vivacious, athletic, and a well-practiced politician. She brought the Archmagister of Skyrim to the imperial city and created the second imperial battle mage since the days of Tiber Septim. Morihatha finished the job her brother had begun and made the imperial province a true government under the Empress, and later the Emperor. Outside the imperial province, however, the empire had been slowly disintegrating. Open revolutions and civil wars had raged unchallenged since the days of her grandfather Sepphoris II. Carefully coordinating her counterattacks, Morihatha slowly claimed back her rebellious vassals, always avoiding overextending herself. Though Morihatha's military companions were remarkably successful, her deliberate pace often frustrated the council. One councilman, an Argonian who took the Clovian name of Thoricles Romus, furious at her refusal to send troops to his troubled Black Marsh, is commonly believed to have hired the assassins who claimed her life in the Third Era 339. Romus was summarily tried and executed, though he protested his innocence to the last. Morihatha had no surviving children, and Eloisa had died of a fever 4 years before. Eloisa's 25-year-old son Pelagius was thus crowned Pelagius IV. Pelagius IV continued his aunt's work, slowly bringing back under his wing the radical and refractory kingdoms, duchies and baronies of the empire. He exercised Morihatha's poise and circumspect pace in his endeavors, but, alas, he did not attain her success. The kingdoms had been free of constraint for so long that even a benign imperial presence was considered odious. Nevertheless, when Pelagius died after a notably stable and prosperous 29-year reign, Tamriel was closer to unity than it had been since the days of Uriel I. Our current emperor, His Awesome and Terrible Majesty Uriel Septim VII, son of Pelagius IV, has the diligence of his great-aunt Morihatha, the political skill of his great-uncle Uriel VI, and the military prowess of his great-grand-uncle Uriel V. For 21 years he reigned and brought justice and order to Tamriel. In the year 3rd Era 389, however, his imperial batamage, Yagar-Tharn, betrayed him. Uriel VII was imprisoned in a dimension of Tharn's creation, and Tharn used his sorcery of illusion to assume the Emperor's aspect. For the next 10 years, Tharn abused imperial privilege but did not continue Uriel VII's schedule of reconquest. It is not entirely known what Tharn's goals and personal accomplishments were during the 10 years he masqueraded as his liege lord. In the 3rd Era 399, an enigmatic champion defeated the battle mage in the dungeons of the Imperial Palace and freed Uriel VII from his other-dimensional jail. Since his emancipation, Uriel Septim VII has worked diligently to renew the battles that will reunite Tamriel. Tharn's interference broke the momentum, it is true, but the years since then have proven that there is hope of the golden age of Tiber Septim's rule, glorifying Tamriel once again. Alright, so Uriel VII, is that the guy we met? Is that the guy I'm aware of? We'll see. Yellow Book of Riddles. This sounds intriguing. Alright, just keeping track of the books that I'm reading on my little notepad. The Yellow Book of Riddles. For earnest pleasure and the strengthening of the mind, the author here collects all that he has learned of the art of riddling by dint of diligent study, and through years of discourse with others of similar inclination. The posing and puzzling of riddles is a convention of polite aristocratic Western society. Nobles and social aspirants collect books of riddles and study them, hoping thereby to increase the chances of winning their appearing sly... Oh, wait. Where did I get winning from? Hoping thereby to increase the chances of their appearing sly and witty in conversation. A metal neither black nor red, as heavy as man's golden greed. What you do to stay ahead with friend or arrow or steed? Answer, lead. Okay. A man says, if you lie to me, I will slay you with my sword. If you tell me the truth, I will slay you with a spell. What must you say to stay alive? The answer, you will slay me with a sword. If you lie to me, I'll slay you with my sword. If you tell me the truth, I'll slay you with a spell. Aha, okay, so, yeah. So using that, okay, yeah, funny. A Bosmer was slain. The Ultima claims the Dunmer is guilty. The Dunmer says the Khajiit did it. The Orc swears he didn't kill the Bosmer. The Khajiit said the Dunmer is lying. If only one of these speaks the truth, who killed the Bosmer? I can't think of this. The answer, the Orc. Okay, cool, whatever. That was a little boring. Whatever, I'm not going to think through that. Antecedents of Dwemer Law. We'll just kind of keep going through this bookshelf, I guess. This book is a historical account of the development of Dwemer law and custom from its roots in High Elven culture. In short, so far as I'm able to trace the order of development in the customs of the Bosmeri tribes, I believe it to have been in all ways comparable to the growth of Altmeri law. The earlier liability for slaves and animals was mainly confined to surrender, which, as in Somerset Isles, later became compensation. And what does this matter for a study of our laws today? So far as concerns the influence of the Altmeri law upon our own, especially the Altmeri law of master and servant, the evidence of it is to be found in every judgment which has been recorded for the last 500 years. It has been stated already that we still repeat the reasoning of the Altmeri magistrates, empty as it is to the present day. and I will quickly show how ultimary custom can be followed into the courts of the Dwemer. Dwemer? You can say I'm a Dwemer. In the laws of Kandar Watch PD 1180, P. Diddy, it is said if one who is owned by another slays one who owns himself, the owner must pay the associates 3 fine instruments and the body of the one who is owned. I'm not understanding any of this. Am I insane, or does this just not make that much sense? There are many other similar citations, and the same principle is extended even to the case of a centurion by which a man is killed. If, at the common workbench, one is slain by an animunculi, a what? The associates of the slain may disassemble the animunculi and take its parts within 30 days. It is instructive to compare what Dark has mentioned concerning the rude beasts of the Tenma forests. If a marsh cat was killed by an Argonian, his family were in disgrace till they retaliated by killing the Argonian, or another like it. But further, if a marsh cat was killed by a fall from a tree, his relatives would take their revenge by toppling the tree and shattering its branches and casting them to every part of the forest. That seems a bit harsh, man. It's just a tree. Alright, let's read Beggar Prince. We'll see if this is a prologue to Thief. I'm not sure. Beggar Prince, the story of Wheedle and his gifts from the Daedric Lord Namira. We look down upon these beggars of the Empire. These lost souls are the poor and wretched of the land. Every city has its beggars. Most are so poor they have only the clothes on their backs. They eat the scraps the rest of us throw out. We toss them a coin so that we don't have to think too long about their plight. Imagine my surprise when I heard the tale of the Beggar Prince. I could not imagine what a prince of beggars would be. Here is the tale I heard. It takes place in the First Age, when gods walked like men, and Daedra stalked in the wilderness with impunity. It is a time before they were all confined to oblivion. There once was a man named Wheedle. Or maybe it was a woman. The story goes to great lengths to avoid declaring Wheedle's gender. Wheedle was the 13th child of a king in Valenwood. As such, Wheedle was in no position to take the throne or even inherit much property or wealth. Wheedle had left the palace to find impendent fortune and glory. After many days of endless forest roads and tiny villages, Wheedle came upon 3 men surrounding a beggar. Came upon 3 men? Okay. The beggar was swaddled in rags from head to toe. No portion of the vagabond's body was visible. The men were intent on slaying the beggar. With a cry of rage and indignation, Wheedle charged the men with sword drawn. Being simple townsfolk, armed only with pitchforks and scythes, they immediately fled from the armored figure with the shining sword. "Many thanks for saving me," wheezed the beggar from beneath the heap of foul rags. Wheedle could barely stand the stench. "What is your name, wretch?" Wheedle asked. "I am Namira." Unlike the townsfolk, Wheedle was well learned. That name meant nothing to them, but to Wheedle it was an opportunity. "You are the Daedric Lord," Wheedle exclaimed. "Why did you allow those men to harass you? You could have slain them all with a whisper." I am pleased you recognized me," Namira rasped. "I am frequently reviled by townsfolk. It pleases me to be recognized for my attribute, if not for my name." Wheedle knew that Namira was the Daedric Lord of all thing gross and repulsive. All thing? This book has a lot of typos. I wonder if it's intentional or something. Diseases such as leprosy and gangrene were her domain. Where others might have seen danger, Wheedle saw opportunity. "O great Namira, let me apprentice myself to you. I ask only that you grant me powers to make my fortune and forge a name for myself that will live through the ages." This is Namira. "Nay, I make my way alone in the world. I have no need for an apprentice." Namira shambled off down the road. Wheedle would not be put off. With a bound, Wheedle was at Namira's heel, pressing the case for an apprenticeship. For 33 days and nights, Wheedle kept up the debate. Namira said nothing, but Wheedle's voice was ceaseless. Finally, on the 33rd day, Wheedle was too hoarse to talk. Namira looked back on the suddenly silent figure. Wheedle knelt in the mud at her feet, open hands raised in supplication. It would seem you have completed your apprenticeship to me after all, Namira declared. I shall grant your request. Tweedle was overjoyed. I grant you the power of disease. You may choose to be afflicted with any disease you choose, changing them at will, so long as it has visible symptoms. However, you must always bear at least one. I grant you the power of pity. You may evoke pity in anyone that sees you. Finally, I grant you the power of disregard. You may cause others to disregard your presence. Tweedle was aghast. These were not boons from which a fortune could be made. They were curses, each a foul in its own right, but together they were unthinkable. How am I to make my fortune and forge a name for myself with these terrible gifts? As you begged at my feet for 33 days and 33 nights, so shall you now beg for your fortune in the cities of men. Your name will become legendary among the beggars of Tamriel. The story of Tweedle, the Prince of Beggars, shall be handed down throughout the generations. It was as Namira predicted. Tweedle was an irresistible beggar. None could see the wretch without desperately wanting to toss a coin at the huddled form. However, Tweedle also discovered that the power of disregard gave great access to the secrets of the realms. People unknowingly said important things where Tweedle could hear them. Tweedle grew to know the comings and goings of every citizen in the city. To this day, it is said that if you really want to know something, go and ask the beggars. They have eyes and ears throughout the cities. They know all the little secrets of the daily lives of its citizens. Intriguing. Now I shall read the Book of Daedra. The Book of Daedra. Azura, whose sphere is dusk and dawn, the magic in between realms of twilight known as Moonshadow, mother of the rose, and the queen of the night sky. Bothia, whose sphere is deceit and conspiracy, and the secret plots of murder, assassination, treason, and unlawful overthrow of authority. Well, I met that one sorceress lady or whatever who was seemingly working for Azura. Clavicus Vile, whose sphere is the granting of power and wishes through ritual invocations and pact. Hermaeus Mora, whose sphere is scrying of the tides of fate, of the past and future, as read in the stars and heavens, and in whose dominion are the treasures of knowledge and memory. Hersign, whose sphere is the hunt, the sport of Daedra, the great game, the chase, known as the huntsman and the father of man-beasts. Malakath, whose sphere is the patronage of the spurned and ostracized, the keeper of the sworn oath and the bloody curse. Meroon's Dagon, whose sphere is destruction, change, revolution, energy, and ambition. Mephala, whose sphere is obscured to mortals, known by the names Web Spinner, Spinner, and Spider, whose only consistent theme seems to be interference in the affairs of mortals for her amusement. Meridia, whose sphere is obscured to mortals, who is associated with the energies of living things. Molag Bal, whose sphere is the domination and enslavement of mortals, whose desire is to harvest the souls of mortals and to bring mortal souls within his sway by spreading seeds of strife and discord in the mortal realms. Namira, whose sphere is the ancient darkness, known as the Spirit Daedra, ruler of sundry dark and shadowy spirits, associated with spiders, insects, slugs, and other repulsive creatures which inspire mortals with an instinctive revulsion. Nocturnal, whose sphere is the night and darkness, who is known as the Night Mistress. Periite? Is that a P? Periite, whose sphere is the ordering of the lowest orders of oblivion, known as the Taskmaster. Sanguine, whose sphere is hedonistic revelry and debauchery, and passionate indulgences of darker natures. Sheogorath. Oh, I read a book about Sheogorath. Blessings of Sheogorath, yeah. Sheogorath, whose fear is madness and whose motives are unknowable. Vernima, whose sphere is the realm of dreams and nightmares, and from whose realm issues forth evil omens. Especially marked for special interest under the heading Malakath, you find a reference to Scourge, blessed by Malakath and dedicated to the use of mortals. In short, the reference suggests that any Daedra attempting to invoke the weapon's powers will be expelled into the void streams of oblivion. Of the legendary artifacts of the Daedra, many are well known, like Azura's Star. Ooh, I'm searching for that. And Sheogorath's Wabbajack. Okay. Others are less well known, like the Scourge, Makan's Hammer, Bane of Daedra. Yet though Malakath blessed Scourge to be potent against his Daedra kin, he thought not that it should fall into Daedric hands, than to serve as a tool for private war among Caitiff and Forsaken. Thus did Malakath curse the device, such that should any dark kin seek to invoke its powers, that a void should open and swallow that Daedra, and purge him into oblivion's void streams, from thence to pathfind back to the real and unreal worlds in the full order of time. Alright, I'm not going to remember much of that. Next up we got Darkest Darkness by Anonymous. In Morrowind, both worshippers and sorcerers summon lesser Daedra and bound Daedra as servants and instruments. Most Daedric servants can be summoned by sorcerers only for very brief periods within the most fragile and tenuous frameworks of command and binding. This, fortunately, limits their capacity for mischief, though in only a few minutes, most of these servants can do terrible harm to their summoners as well as their enemies. Worshippers may bind other Daedric servants to this plane through rituals and pacts. Such arrangements result in the Daedric servant remaining on this plane indefinitely, or at least until their bodily manifestations on this plane are destroyed, precipitating their supernatural essences back to oblivion. Whenever Daedra are encountered, at Daedric ruins or in tombs, they are almost invariably long-term visitors to our plane. Likewise, lesser entities bound by their Daedra lords into weapons and armor may be suffered for brief periods, or may persist indefinitely, so long as they are not destroyed and banished. The class of bound weapons and bound armors summoned by temple followers and conjurers are examples of short-term bindings. Daedric artifacts, like Mehrunes' razor and the mask of Clavicus Vile, are examples of long-term bindings. The Tribunal Temple of Morrowind has incorporated the veneration of Daedra as lesser spirits subservient to the immortal Amsivi, the triune godhead of Amalexia, Sothasil, and Vivek. These subordinate Daedra are divided into the good Daedra and the bad Daedra. The good Daedra have willingly submitted to the authority of Amsivi. The bad Daedra are rebels who defy Amsivi, treacherous kin who are more often adversaries than allies. The good Daedra are Bothaya, Azura, and Mephala. Okay, so Azura is a good Daedra. The Hunger is a powerful and violent lesser Daedra associated with Bothaya, father of plots, a sinuous, long-limbed, long-tailed creature with a beast-skulled head, noted for its paralyzing touch and its ability to disintegrate weapons and armor. The Winged Twilight is a message of Azura, goddess of dusk and dawn. Winged Twilights resemble the feral harpies of the West, though the feminine aspects of the Winged Twilights are more ravishing, and their long, sharp, hooked tails are immeasurably more deadly. Spider Daedra are the servants of Mephala, taking the form of spider humanoid centaurs with a naked upper head, torso, and arms of human proportions, mounted on the 8 legs and armored carapace of a giant spider. Unfortunately, these Daedra are so fierce and irrational that they cannot be trusted to heed the commands of the spinner. As a consequence, few sorcerers are willing to either summon or bind such creatures in Morrowind. The bad Daedra are Mehrunes Dagon, Malakath, Sheogorath, and Molag Bal. 3 lesser Daedra are associated with Mehrunes Dagon, the agile and pesky Scamp, the ferocious and beast-like Clanfear, and the noble and deadly Dremora. Crocodile-headed humanoid Daedra, called the Daedroth, is a servant of Molag Bal, while the giant but dim-witted Ogrim is a servant of Malakath. Sheogorath's lesser Daedra, the Golden Saint, a half-clothed human female in appearance, is highly resistant to magic and a dangerous spellcaster. Another type of lesser Daedra, often encountered in Morrowind, is the Atronach, or Elemental Daedra. Atronachs have no binding kinship or alignments with the Daedra Lords, serving one realm or another at whim, shifting sides according to seduction, compulsion, or opportunity. Okay. There's a lot of information in these books, and I'm not going to remember all of it. Next up, Frontier, Conquest. Frontier, Conquest, and Accommodation. A Social History of Cyrodiil. University of Gwylem Press. 3rd Era, 344. Historians often portray the human settlement of Tamriel as a straightforward process of military expansion of the Nords of Skyrim. In fact, human settlers occupied nearly every corner of Tamriel before Skyrim was even founded. These so-called Nedic peoples include the Proto-Cyrodiilians, the ancestors of the Bretons, the Aboriginals of Hammerfell, and perhaps a now-vanished human population of Morrowind. Strictly speaking, the Nords are simply another of these Nedic peoples, the only one that failed to find a method of peaceful accommodation with the elves who already occupied Tamriel. Ysgramor was... Is that a Y or a V? Ysgramor was certainly not the first human settler in Tamriel. In fact, in fleeing civil war in Atmora, as the Song of Return states, Ysgramor... I'll just use it, I think it's a V, I'm pretty sure it's a V. Ysgramor was following a long tradition of migration from Atmora. Tamriel had served as a safety valve for Atmora for centuries before Ysgramor's arrival. Malcontents, dissidents, rebels, landless younger sons all made the difficult crossing from Atmora to the new world of Tamriel. But then see that the Y in younger looks like a Y. But like the stem on maybe it is Ysgramor. Let me look this up. Figure this out. I'm just gonna search it with a Y and we'll figure it out. Let's see. Ysgramor. Yep, it's a Y. Okay. That's cool. Good to know. Alright. Safety valve for Atmora for centuries before Ysgramor's arrival. Malcontents, dissidents, rebels, landless younger sons all made the difficult crossing from Atmora to the new world of Tamriel. New archaeological excavations date the earliest human settlements in Hammerfell, High Rock, and Cyrodiil at What's ME? Medieval era? 800 to 1000, centuries earlier than Ysgramor, even assuming that the 12 Nord kings prior to Harold were actual historical figures. The Nedic peoples were a minority in the land of elves, and had no choice but to live peacefully with the Elder race. In High Rock, Hammerfell, Cyrodiil, and possibly Morrowind, they did just that, and the Nedic peoples flourished and expanded over the last centuries of the Merethic era. Only in Skyrim did this accommodation break down, an event recorded in the Song of Return. Perhaps, being close to reinforcements from Atmora, the Proto-Nords did not feel it necessary to submit the authority of the Skyrim elves. Indeed, the early Nord chronicles note that under King Harold, the first historical Nord ruler, First Era 113-221, the Atmoran mercenaries returned to their homeland following the consolidation of Skyrim as a centralized kingdom. Whatever the case, the pattern was set. In Skyrim, expansion would proceed militarily with human settlement following the frontier of conquest, and the line between human territory and elven territory was relatively clear. But beyond this zone of conflict, the other Nedic peoples continued to merge with their elven neighbors. When the Nord armies of the First Empire finally entered High Rock and Cyrodiil, they found Bretons and Proto-Cyrodiils already living there among the elves. Indeed, the Nords found it difficult to distinguish between Elf and Breton. The two races had already intermingled to such a degree. The arrival of the Nord armies upset the balance of power between the Nedic peoples and the Elves. Although the Nords' expansion into High Rock and Cyrodiil was relatively brief, less than 2 centuries, the result was decisive. From then on, power in those regions shifted from the Elves to the humans. And the last book on this shelf, Mixed Unit Tactics. Mixed Unit Tactics in the 5 Years' War, Volume 1, by Codus Calonis. The legions could learn from the unconventional tactics used by the Khajiit in the 5 Years' War against Valenwood. I was stationed at the Sphinx Moth Legion fort on the border near Dune, and witnessed many of the northern skirmishes firsthand. The war started with the so-called Slaughter of the Torval. The Khajiit claimed that the Bosmer invaded the city without provocation and killed over 1,000 citizens before being driven off by reinforcements from a nearby jungle tribe. The Bosmer claimed that the attack was in retaliation for Khajiit bandits who were attacking wood caravans headed for Valenwood. In the spring of the Third Era 396, the war moved closer to Fort Sphinx Moth. I was posted on lookout and saw parts of the conflict. I later spoke with both Khajiit and Bosmer who fought in the battle, and it will serve as an excellent example of how the Khajiit use a mixture of ground and tree units to win the war. The Khajiit began the fight in an unusual way by sending tree-cutting teams of Cathay Rat and the fearsome Senche Rat, or battle cats, into the outskirts of Valenwood's forest. When word reached the Bosmer that trees were being felled, allegedly a crime in the strange Bosmeri religion, a unit of archers were dispatched from larger conflicts in the south. The Bosmer were thus goaded into splitting their forces into smaller groups. The Bosmer archers took up positions in the remaining trees, whose branches were now 20 or more feet apart, allowing some light into the forest floor. The Bosmer bent the remaining trees with their magics into small fortifications from which to fire their bows. When the tree cutters arrived the next morning, a half-dozen Khajiit fell to the Bosmer arrows in the first volley. After that, the Khajiit took large wooden shields from the backs of the Sencherat and made a crude shelter. The Khajiit, even the enormous Sencherat, were able to hide between this shelter and one of the larger trees. When it became apparent that the Khajiit would not leave their shelter, some Bosmer chose to descend and engage the Khajiit sword to claw. When the Bosmer were nearly upon the shelter, one of the Khajiit began playing on a native instrument of plucked metal bars. This was a signal of some kind, and a small group of the man-like Ohms and Ohmsrat emerged from covered holes on the forest floor. Although outnumbered, they were attacking from behind by surprise and won the ground quickly. The Bosmer archers in the trees would have still won the battle were they not having troubles of their own. A group of Dagi and Dagirat, two of the less common forms of Khajiit who live in the trees of the Tenmar forest, jumped from one tree to another under a magical cover of silence. They took up positions in the higher branches that could not hold a Bosmer's weight. When the signal came, they used their claws and either torches or spells of fire, accounts from the two survivors I spoke with vary on this point, to distract the archers while the battle on the ground took place. A few of the archers were able to flee, but most were killed. Apparently, the Dagi and Dagirat have more magical ability than is widely believed if they were able to keep themselves magically silenced for so long. One of the surviving Bosmer told me that he saw a few ordinary cats among the Dagi, and even claimed that these ordinary cats are known as Alfik, and that they were the spellcasters, but Bosmer are almost as unreliable as the Khajiit when it comes to the truth, and I cannot believe that a house cat can cast spells. At the end of the day, the Khajiit lost perhaps a half-dozen fighters out of force of no more than 4 dozen, while the Bosmer lost nearly an entire company of archers. The survivors were unable to report back after a second company of archers arrived, and this strategy was repeated again with similar results. Finally, a much larger force was sent, and the Bosmer won that battle with the help of the native animals of Valenwood. That third skirmish and the Khajiit response I will discuss in the second volume of the series. Next book up, Mysterious Akavir. Akavir means Dragonland. Tamriel means Dawn's Beauty. Atmora means Elder Wood. Only the Red Gods know what Yokuda ever meant. Akavir is the kingdom of the beasts. No men or mare live in Akavir, though men once did. These men, however, were eaten long ago by the vampiric serpent folk of Seiski. Had they not been eaten, these men would have eventually migrated to Tamriel. The Nords left Atmora for Tamriel. Before them, the Elves had abandoned Aldmeris for Tamriel. The Red Gods destroyed Yokuda so they could make their journey. All men and mare know Tamriel is the nexus of creation, where the last war will happen, where the gods unmade Lorcan and left their adamantine tower of secrets. Who knows what the Akavir think of Tamriel? But ask yourself, why have they tried to invade it 3 times or more? There are 4 major nations of Akavir: Camel, Seiski, Tangmo, and Kapotun. When they are not busy trying to invade Tamriel, they're fighting with each other. Camel is Snowhell. Demons live there, armies of them. Every summer they thaw out and invade Tangmo, but the brave monkey folk always drive them away. Once Adasum Dir Kamal, a king among demons, attempted to conquer Morrowind, but Almalexia and the Underking destroyed him at Red Mountain. Seiski is Snake Palace, once the strongest power in Akavir, before the Tiger Dragon came. The Tiger Dragon? The Serpent Folk ate all the men of Akavir a long time ago, but still kind of look like them. They are tall, beautiful, if frightening, covered in golden scales, and immortal. They enslave the goblins of the surrounding isles, who provide labor and flesh blood. The holdings of Seiski are widespread. When natives of Tamriel think of the Akaviri, they think of the Serpent Folk, because one ruled the Cyrodiilic Empire for 400 years in the previous era. He was potentate Versidue Shai, assassinated by the Morag Tong. Tangmo is the 1,000 Monkey Isles. There are many breeds of monkey folk, and they are all kind, brave, and simple, and many are also very crazy. They can raise armies when they must, for all of the other Akaviri nations have, at one time or another, tried to enslave them. They cannot decide who they hate more, the snakes or the demons, but ask one and he will probably say snakes. Though once bitter enemies, the monkey folk are now allies with the tiger folk of Kapotun. Kapotun is the tiger dragon's empire. The cat folk here are ruled by the divine Toshraka, the tiger dragon. They are now a very great empire, stronger than Seiski, though not at sea. After the serpent folk ate all the men, they tried to eat all the dragons. They managed to enslave the red dragons, but the black ones had fled to, then, Potun. A great war was raged, which left both the cats and the snakes weak, and the dragons all dead. Since that time, the catfolk have tried to become the dragons. Toshraka is the first to succeed. He is the largest dragon in the world, orange and black, and he has very many new ideas. First, Toshraka says, is that we kill all the vampire snakes. Then the Tiger Dragon Emperor wants to invade Tamriel. That's concerning, but I'm sure nothing for me to worry about. Next book, The Arcturian Heresy, by the Underking Ismir Kingmaker. With his god destroyed, Wulfharth finds it hard to keep his form. He staggers out of Red Mountain to the battlefield beyond. The world has shaken, and all of Morrowind is made of fire. A strong gale picks up and blows his ashes back to Skyrim. Wulfharth adopts and is adopted by the Nords then. Ysmir the Great Wind, the Storm of Kine. But what? But through Lorcan he lost his national identity. All he wants the Nords for is to kill the Tribunal. He raises a storm, sends his people, and is driven back by Tribunal forces. The Dunmer are too strong now. Wulfharth goes underground to wait and strengthen and reform his body anew. Oddly enough, it is Almalexia who disturbs his rest, summoning the Underking to fight alongside the Tribunal against Adasum Dir Kamal, the Akaviri demon. Wulfharth disappears after Adasum is defeated, and does not return for 300 years. It is the rumbling of the Greybeards that wake him. Though the empires crumble, there are rumors that a chosen one will come to restore it. This new emperor will defeat the elves and rule a united Tamriel. Naturally, Wulfharth thinks he is the figure of prophecy. He goes directly to High Hrothgar to hear the Greybeards speak. When they do, Ysmir is blasted to ash again. He is not the chosen one. It is a warrior youth from High Rock. As the Grey Wind goes to find this boy, he hears the Greybeard's warning, "Remember the color of betrayal, King Wulfharth." The Western Reach was at war. Kublai Kane, that's not a B. Kulakane, the king of Falkreath in West Cyrodiil, was in a bad situation. To make any bid at unifying the Colovian estates, he needed to secure his northern border, where the Nords and Reachmen had been fighting for centuries. He allies with Skyrim at the Battle of Old Hroldan. Leading his forces was Hjalti Earlybeard. Hjalti was from the island kingdom of Alcair in High Rock, and would become Tiber Septim, the first emperor of Tamriel. Wait, what? What? Hjalti is Tiber Septim the first? Huh? Okay. Hjalti was a shrewd tactician, and his small band of Colovian troops and Nord berserkers broke the Reachman line, forcing them back beyond the gates of Old Hroldan. A siege seemed impossible, as Hjalti could expect no reinforcements from Falkreath. That night a storm came and visited Hjalti's camp. It spoke with him in his tent. At dawn, Hjalti went up the gates, and the storm followed just above his head. Arrows could not penetrate the winds around him. He shouted down the walls of Old Hroldan, and his men poured in. After the victory, the Nords called Hjalti Talos, or Stormcrown. Okay, so we're getting some more lore on Talos, aka Tiber Septim the First. Interesting. Cuchulainn, with his new invincible general, unifies West Cyrodiil in under a year. No one can stand before Hjalti's storms. The Underking knows that if Hjalti is to become Emperor of Tamriel, he must first capture the Eastern Heartland. Hjalti uses them both. He needs Cuchulainn in the Colovian estates, where foreigners are mistrusted. It is obvious why he needs Ysmir. They march on the east, the battle mages surrender before their armies, and they take the citadel. I can't speak. Before Cuchulainn can be crowned, Hjalti secretly murders him and his loyalist contingent. These assassinations are blamed on the enemies of Cuchulainn, which, for political reasons, are still the Western Reach. Zurian Archytas, the Grand Battle Mage, not the Underking, then crowns Hjalti as Tiber Septim, new Emperor of all Cyrodiil. After he captures the Imperial throne, Septim finds the initial administration of a fully united Cyrodiil a time-consuming task. He sends the Underking to deal with Imperial expansion into Skyrim and High Rock. Ysmir, mindful that it might seem as if Tiber Septim is in two places at once, works behind the scenes. This period of level-headed statesmanship and diplomacy, this sudden silence, heretofore unknown in the roaring tales of Telosian conquest, are explained away later. The assassination story is embroidered. Now it is popularly Talos' own throat that was cut. The human kingdoms are conquered, even Hammerfell, whose capture was figured to be an arduous task. The Underking wants a complete invasion, a chance to battle the foreign wind spirits himself, but Tiber Septim refutes him. He has already made a better plan, one that will seem to legitimize his rule. Cyrodiil supports the losing side of a civil war and are invited in. Finally, the Empire can turn its eyes onto the Elves. The Underking continues to press on Tiber Septim the need to conquer Morrowind. The Emperor is not sure that it is a wise idea. He has heard of the Tribunal's power. The Underking wants his vengeance, and reminds Tiber Septim that he is fated to conquer the Elves, even the Tribunal. Arctis advises that the move, Arctis advises against the move, but Septim covets the Ebony and Morrowind, as he sorely needs a source of capital to rebuild Cyrodiil after 400 years of war. The Underking tells him that with the Tribunal dead, Septim might steal the Tribunal's power, and use it against the High Elves, certainly the oldest enemies of Lorkhan, predating even the Tribunal. Somerset Isle is the farthest thing, my nose is itchy, from Tiber Septim's mind. Even then, he was planning to send Zurian Archytas to the King of Alinor to make peace. There's a lot of names that I'm not getting here. I don't know everybody. The Ebony need wins out in the end. The Empire invades Morrowind, and the Tribunal give up. When certain conditions of the armistice include not only a policy of non-interference with the Tribunal, but also, in the Underking's eyes, a validation of their religious beliefs, Ysmir is furious. He abandons the Empire completely. This was the betrayal the Greybeard spoke of, or so he thinks. Without the Underking's power, all ideas of conquering Tamriel vanish. Would have been nice, Septim thinks, but let's just worry about Cyrodiil and the human nations. Already there's a rebellion in Hammerfell. Pieces of Numidium trickle in, though. Why'd I say it like that? Pieces of Numidium trickle in, though. Tiber Septim, always fascinated by the dwarves, has Zuran Arctis research this grand artifact. In doing so, Arctis stumbles upon some of the stories of the war at Red Mountain. He discovers the reason the Numidium was made and some of its potential. Most importantly, he learns the Underking's place in the war. But Zuran Arctis was working from incomplete plans. He thinks it is the heart of Lorkhan's body that is needed to power the Numidium. While Zuran Arctis is raving about his discovery, the prophecy finally becomes clear to Tiber Septim. This Numidium is what he needs to conquer the world. It is his destiny to have it. He contacts the Underking and says he was right all along. They should kill the tribunal, and they need to get together and make a plan. While the Underking was away, he realized the true danger of Dagoth-Ur. Something must be done. But he needs an army, and his old one is available again. The trap is set. The Underking arrives and is ambushed by Imperial guards. As he takes them on, Zuran Arctis uses a soul gem on him. With his last breath, the Underking's heart roars a hole through the battle mage's chest. In the end, everyone is dead. The Underking is reverted back to ash, and Tiber Septim strolls in to take the soul gem. When the Elder Council arrives, he tells them about the second attempt on his life, this time by his trusted battle mage Zuran Arctis, who was attempting a coup. He has the dead guards celebrated as heroes, even the one who was blasted to ash. He warns Cyrodiil about the dangers within, but says he has a solution to the dangers without: the Mantella. The Numidium, while not the god Tiber Septim and the Dwemer hoped for, the Underking was not exactly Lorkhan after all, it does while not the god Tiber Septim and the Dwemer hoped for, the Underking was not exactly Lorkhan after all, it does the job. After its work on Somerset Isle, a new threat appears, a rotting undead wizard who controls the skies. He blows the Numidium apart, but it pounds him into the ground with its last flailings, leaving only a black splotch. The Mantella falls into the sea, seemingly forever. Meanwhile, Tiber Septim crowns himself the first emperor of Tamriel. He lives until he is 108, the richest man in history. All aspects of his early reign are rewritten. Still, there are conflicting reports of what really happened. And this is why there is such confusion over such questions as why does Alcair claim to be the birthplace of Talos, while other sources say he came from Atmora? Why does Tiber Septim seem to be a different person after his first roaring conquests? Why does Tiber Septim betray his battle mage? Is the Mantella the heart of the battle mage, or is it the heart of Tiber Septim? Tiber Septim is succeeded by his grandson, Pelagius I. Pelagius is just not of the same caliber. In truth, he's a little nervous with all these provinces. Then an advisor shows up. "I was friends with your grandfather," the Underking says. "He sent me to help you run the empire." And so the history picks up from what we know from a brief history of stuff and things. Okay. Well, I have to leave to go to work, but I will finish this book series after I come back from work, so you won't notice any gap. Be right back. Alright, I'm back from work. We're going to read the 3 volumes of the Biography of Barenziah, and then I think I'll probably be done with this episode. We'll see. Biography of Barenziah Volume 1 by Stern Gamboj, Imperial Scribe. Late in the Second Era, a girl child, Barenziah, was born to the rulers of the kingdom of Mournhold in what is now the Imperial province of Morrowind. She was reared in all the luxury and security befitting a royal dark elven child until she reached 5 years of age. At that time, His Excellency Tiber Septim Tiber Septim I, the first Emperor of Tamriel, demanded that the decadent rulers of Morrowind yield to him and institute imperial reforms. Trusting to their vaunted magic, the Dark Elves impudently refused until Tiber Septim's army was on the borders. An armistice was hastily signed by the now eager Dunmer, but not before there were several battles, one of which laid waste to Mournhold, now called Almalexia. Oh, interesting. I've heard Almalexia before. I've heard of it in other stories, so... Used to be called Mournhold. Got it. Cool. Little Princess Barenziah and her nurse were found among the wreckage. The Imperial General Symmachus himself a dark elf, suggested to Tiber Septim that the child might someday be valuable, and she was therefore placed with a loyal supporter who had recently retired from the Imperial Army. Sven Advinson had been granted the title of Count upon his retirement. His fiefdom Darkmoor. Is it fiefdom or fiefdom? It's fiefdom. I heard some people say it fiefdom, and I'm like, no, that's not right. That doesn't sound correct. Fiefdom Darkmoor was a small town in central Skyrim. Count Sven and his wife reared the princess as their own daughter, seeing to it that she was educated appropriately, and more importantly, that the imperial virtues of obedience, discretion, loyalty, and piety were instilled in the child. In short, she was made fit to take her place as a member of the new ruling class of Morrowind. The girl Barenziah grew in beauty, grace, and intelligence. She was sweet-tempered, a joy to her adoptive parents and their 5 young sons, who loved her as their elder sister. Other than their appearance, she differed from young girls of her class only that she had a strong empathy for the woods and fields, and was wont to escape her household duties to wander there at times. Barenziah was happy and content until her 16th year, when a wicked orphan stable boy whom she had befriended out of pity told her that he had overheard a conspiracy between her guardian, Count Sven, and a Redguard visitor to sell her as a concubine in Rihad, as no Nord or Briton would marry her on account of her black skin, and no dark elf would have her because of her foreign upbringing. Sorry, I just ate dinner. I'm like, kind of like, my throat's in dinner mode. "Whatever shall I do?" the poor girl said, weeping and trembling, for she had been brought up in innocence and trust, and it never occurred to her that her friend the stable boy would lie to her. The wicked boy, who was called Straw, said that she must run away if she valued her virtue, but that he would come with her as her protector. Sorrowfully, Barenziah agreed to this plan, and that very night she disguised herself as a boy, and the pair escaped to the nearby city of Whiterun. After a few days there, they managed to get jobs as guards for a disreputable merchant caravan. The caravan was heading east by side roads in a mendacious attempt to elude the lawful tolls charged on the imperial highways. Thus, the pair eluded pursuit until they reached the city of Riften, where they ceased their travels for a time. They felt safe in Riften, close as it was to the Morrowind border, so that dark elves were enough of a common sight. Volume 2. The first volume of this story told the story... of this series... Dude, I can't read. Sometimes I just skip words. The first volume of this series told the story of Barenziah's origin heiress to the throne of Mournhold until her father rebelled against His Excellency Tiber Septim I and brought ruin to the province of Morrowind. Thanks largely to the benevolence of the Emperor, the child Barenziah was not destroyed with her parents, but reared by Count Sven of Darkmoor, a loyal imperial trustee. She grew up into a beautiful and pious child, trustful of her guardian's care. This trust, however, was exploited by a wicked orphan stable boy at Count Sven's estate, who with lies and fabrications tricked her into fleeing Darkmoor with him when she turned 16. I messed up the cadence of that sentence, sorry. After many adventures on the road, they settled in Riften, a Skyrim city near the Morrowind borders. The stable boy Straw was not altogether evil. He loved Barenziah in his own selfish fashion, and deception was the only way he could think of that would cement possession of her. She, of course, felt only friendship toward him, but he was hopeful that she would gradually change her mind. He wanted to buy a small farm and settle down into a comfortable marriage, but at the time his earnings were barely enough to feed and shelter them. After only a short time in Riften, Straw fell in with a bold, villainous Khajiit thief named Theris, who proposed that they rob the Imperial Commandant's house in the central part of the city. Theris said that he had a client, a traitor to the Empire, who would pay well for any information they could gather there. Barenziah happened to overhear this plan and was appalled. She stole away from their rooms and walked the streets of Riften in desperation, torn between her loyalty to the Empire and her love for her friends. In the end, loyalty to the Empire prevailed over personal friendship, and she approached the Commandant's house, revealed her true identity, and warned him of her friend's plan. The Commandant listened to her tale, praised her courage, and assured her that no harm would come to her. He was none other than General Symmachus, who had been scouring the countryside in search of her since her disappearance, and had just arrived in Riften, hot in pursuit. He took her into his custody and informed her that, far from being sent away to be sold, she was to be reinstated as the Queen of Mournhold as soon as she turned 18. Until that time, she was to live with the Septim family in the newly built imperial city, where she would learn something of government and be presented at the imperial court. At the imperial city, Barenziah befriended the emperor Tiber Septim during the middle years of his reign. Tiber's children, particularly his eldest son and heir Pelagius I, came to love her as a sister. The ballads of the day praised her beauty, chastity, wit, and learning. On her 18th birthday, the entire imperial city turned out to watch her farewell procession preliminary to her return to her native land. Sorrowful as they were at her departure, all knew that she was ready for her glorious destiny as sovereign of the Kingdom of Mournhold. Volume 3. In the second volume of this series, it was told how Barenziah was kindly welcomed to the newly constructed imperial city by the Emperor Tiber Septim and his family, who treated her like a long-lost daughter during her almost one-year stay. After several happy months there, learning her duties as vassal queen under the Empire, the Imperial General Symmachus escorted her to Mournhold, where she took up her duties as queen of her people under his wise guidance. Gradually they came to love one another and were married and crowned in a splendid ceremony, at which the Emperor himself officiated. After several hundred years of marriage, a son, Helseth, was born to the royal couple, amid celebration and joyous prayer. Although it was not publicly known at the time, it was shortly before this blessed event that the Staff of Chaos had been stolen from its hiding place deep in the Mournhold mines by a clever enigmatic bard, known only as the Nightingale. 8 years after Helseth's birth, Barenziah bore a daughter, Morgaia, named after Symmachus's mother, and the royal couple's joy seemed complete. Alas, shortly after that, relations with the Empire mysteriously deteriorated, leading to much civil unrest in Mournhold. After fruitless investigations and attempts at reconciliation, in despair, Barenziah took her young children and traveled to the imperial city herself to seek the ear of then-Emperor Uriel Septim VII. Symmachus remained in Mournhold to deal with the grumbling peasants and annoyed nobility, and to do what he could to stave off an impending insurrection. During her audience with the Emperor, Barenziah, through her magical arts, came to realize, to her horror and dismay, that the so-called Emperor was an impostor, none other than the bard Nightingale who'd stolen the Staff of Chaos. Read about that in another story earlier. Exercising great self-control, she concealed this realization from him. That evening, news came that Symmachus had fallen in battle with the revolting peasants of Mournhold, and that the kingdom had been taken over by the rebels. Barenziah at this point did not know where to seek help, or from whom. The gods that fateful night were evidently looking out for her, as if in redress of her loss. King Aedwar of High Rock, an old friend of Uriel Septim and Symmachus, came by on a social call. He comforted her, pledged his friendship, and furthermore confirmed her suspicions that the Emperor was indeed a fraud, and none other than Yeager Tharn, the Imperial Battle Mage, and one of the Nightingale's many alter egos. Tharn had supposedly retired into seclusion from public work and installed his assistant, Rhea Silmain, in his stead. The hapless assistant was later put to death under mysterious circumstances. Supposedly a plot implicating her had been uncovered and she'd been summarily executed. However, her ghost had appeared to Aedwar in a dream and revealed to him that the true Emperor had been kidnapped by Tharn and imprisoned in an alternate dimension. Read about that as well. Tharn had then used the Staff of Chaos to kill her when she attempted to warn the Elder Council of his nefarious plot. Together, Aedwar and Barenziah plotted to gain the false Emperor's confidence. Meanwhile, another friend of Rhea's, known only as the Champion, who apparently possessed great, albeit then untapped potential, was incarcerated at the Imperial dungeons. However, she had access to his dreams, and she told him to bide his time until she could devise a plan that would effect his escape. Then he could begin on his mission to unmask the impostor. Barenziah continued to charm and eventually befriended the Erstadt's Emperor. By contriving to read his secret diary, she learned that he had broken the Staff of Chaos into 8 pieces and hidden them in far-flung locations scattered across Tamriel. She managed to obtain a copy of the key to Raya's friend's cell and bribed a guard to leave it there as if by accident. Their champion, whose name was unknown even to Barenziah and Adwire, made his escape through a shift gate Raya had opened in an obscure corner of the Imperial dungeons using her already failing powers. The champion was free at last, and almost immediately went to work. It took Barenziah several more months to learn the hiding places of all 8 staff pieces through snatches of overheard conversation and rare glances at Thon's diary. Once she had the vital information, however, which she communicated with Raya forthwith, who in turn passed it on to the champion, she and Adwire lost no time. They fled to Wayrest, his ancestral kingdom in the province of Hyrok, where they managed to fend off the sporadic efforts of Thon's henchmen to haul them back to the Imperial city, or at the very least obtain revenge. Oh, man. Sorry. Thon, whatever else might be said of him, was no one's fool, save perhaps Barenziah's, and he concentrated most of his efforts towards tracking down and destroying the champion. As all now know, the courageous, indefatigable, and forever nameless champion was successful in reuniting the 8 sundered pieces of the Staff of Chaos. With it, he destroyed Thon and rescued the true Emperor Uriel Septim VII. Following what has come to be known as the Restoration, a grand state memorial service was held for Symmachus at the Imperial City, befitting the man who'd served the Septim dynasty for so long and so well. Barenziah and good King Adwire had come to care deeply for one another during their trials and adventures, and were married in the same year, shortly after their flight from the Imperial City. Her 2 children from a previous marriage with Symmachus remained with her, and a regent was appointed to rule Mournhold in her absence. Up to the present time, Queen Barenziah has been in Wayrest with Prince Helseth and Princess Morgaya. She plans to return to Mournhold after Adwire's death. Since he was already elderly when they wed, she knows that that event, alas, could not be far off as the elves reckon time. Until then, she shares in the government of the kingdom of Wayrest with her husband, and seems glad and content with her finally quiet and happily unremarkable life. What a lovely little story. What do you think of that, Lydia? Good books? Good stories? I think so. I think I shall not do that right now. Perhaps in a main episode. We shall see. Let me read this book while we're at it and not look at this staff that is worth 2,443 gold just sitting right here. Words of Clan Mother Ahnissi to her favored daughter. Ahnissi tells you, you are no longer a mewing kitten, and you've learned to keep secrets from Ahnissi, and so Ahnissi tells you. In the beginning, there were 2 little mates, Anur and Fadamai. After many phases, Fadamai said to Anur, let us wed and make children to share our happiness. And so they gave birth to Alkosh, the first cat. And Anur said, Alkosh, we give you time, for what is as fast or slow as a cat? And they gave birth to Kenarthi, the winds. Kenarthi, to you we give the sky, for what can fly higher than the wind? And thus they gave birth to Magris, the cat's eye. Magris, to you we give the sun, for what is brighter than the eye of a cat? And they gave birth to Mara, the mother cat. Mara, you are love, for what is more loving than a mother? And they gave birth to Srendar, the runt. Srendar, we give you mercy, for how does a runt survive except by mercy? And many phases passed, and Abner and Fadamai were happy. And Anur said, we should have more children to share our happiness. And Fadamai agreed, and she gave birth to Hermora, and she gave birth to Hersign, and she gave birth to Merans, and Mafala, and Sangin, and Shegorath, and Shegorath, not Sheogorath. Different character. And many others. And Fadamai said, Hermora, you are the tides, for who can say whether the moons predict the tides or the tides predict the moons? Hirisan, you are the hungry cat, for what hunts better than a cat with an empty belly? Merons, you are the Jakajit, for what is more destructive than an kitten? Mafala, you are the clan mother, for what is more secretive than the ways of the clan mothers? Sanguine, you are the blood cat, for who can control the urges of blood? Shegorath, you are the skooma cat, for what is crazier than a cat on skooma? And Anur said, 2 litters is enough, for too many children will steal our happiness. But Kenathi went to Fadamai and said, Fadamai, mother, Kenathi grows lonely so high above the world, where not even my brother Alkosh can fly. Fadamai took pity on her and tricked Anura to make her pregnant again. And Fadamai gave birth to the moons and their motions, and she gave birth to Nirni, the majestic sands and lush forests. And she gave birth to Azura, the dusk and the dawn. And from the beginning, Azura, like the goddess thing that woman's, or is that different? I don't know. And from the beginning, Nirni and Azura fought for their mother's favor. Anur caught Fadamai while she was still birthing, and he was angry. Anur struck Fadamai, and she fled to birth the last of her litter far away in the great darkness. Fadamai's children heard what had happened, and they all came to be with her and protect her from Anur's anger. And Fadamai gave birth to Lorkaj, the last of her litter, in the great darkness. And the heart of Lorkaj was filled with the great darkness. And when he was born, the great darkness knew its name, and it was Namira. And Fadamai knew her time was near. Fadamai said, Jakaje, to you, Fadamai gives the lattice, for what is steadier than the phases of the moons? Your eternal motions will protect us from Anu's anger. And the moons left to take their place in the heavens. And Anu growled and shook the great darkness, but he could not cross the lattice. And Fadamai said, Nearly to you, Fadamai leaves her greatest gift. You will give birth to many people, as Fadamai gave birth today. When Nirni saw that Azura had nothing, Nirni left smiling. And all Fadamai's children left except Azura. And Fadamai said, To you, my favored daughter, Fadamai leaves her greatest gift. To you, Fadamai leaves her secrets. And Fadamai told her favored daughter 3 things. And Fadamai said, When Nirni is filled with her children, take one of them and change them. Make the fastest, cleverest, most beautiful people, and call them Khajiit. And Fadamai said, The Khajiit must be the best climbers, for if Massa and Secunda fail, they must climb Kenathi's breath to set the moons back to their courses. And Fadamai said the Khajiit must be the best deceivers, for they must always hide their nature from the children of Anur. And Fadamai said the Khajiit must be the best survivors, for Nirni will be jealous, and she will make the sands harsh, and the forests unforgiving. And the Khajiit will always be hungry and at war with Nirni. And so with these words, Fadamai died. After many phases, Nirni came to Lorkaj and said, Lorkaj, Fadamai told me to give birth to many children, but there is no place for them. And Lorkaj said, Lorkaj makes a place for children, and Lorkaj puts you there so you can give birth. But the heart of Lorkaj was filled with the great darkness, and Lorkaj tricked his siblings so that they were forced into this new place with Nirni. And many of Fadamai's children escaped and became the stars, and many of Fadamai's children died to make Nirni's path stable. And the survivors stayed and punished Lorkaj. The children of Fadamai tore out the heart of Lorkaj and hid it deep within Nirni. And they said, We curse you, noisy Lorkaj, to walk Nirni for many phases. But Nirni soon forgave Lorkaj, for Nirni could make children. And she filled herself with children, but cried because her favorite children, the forest people, did not know their shape. And Azura came to her and said, Poor Nirni, stop your tears. Azura makes for you a gift of a new people." Nirni stopped weeping, and Azura spoke the first secret to the moons, and they parted and let Azura pass. And Azura took some forest people who were torn between man and beast, and she placed them in the best deserts and forests on Nirni. And Azura in her wisdom made them of many shapes, one for every purpose. And Azura named them Khajiit, and told them her second secret, and taught them the value of secrets. And Azura bound the new Khajiit to the lunar lattice, as is proper for Nirni's secret defenders. Then Azura spoke the third secret, and the moons shone down on the marshes, and their light became sugar. But Ifa heard the first secret, and snuck in behind Azura, and Ifa could not appreciate secrets, and he told Nirni of Azura's tricks. So Nirni made the deserts hot, the sands biting, and Nirni made the forests wet and filled with the poisons. And Nirni thanked Ifa and let him change the forest people also. And Ifa did not have Azura's subtle wisdom, so Ifa made the forest people elves, always and never beasts. And Ifa named them Bosmer. And from that moment they were no longer in the same litter as the Khajiit. And because Ifa had no appreciation for secrets, he shouted the first secret across all the heavens with his last breath, so that all of Fatimai's children could cross the lattice. But Azura, in her wisdom, closed the ears of angry Anur and noisy Lorkhaj, so they did not hear the word. That was a lot. That was an interesting Khajiit lore thingy. Very interesting. Okay, well, here, I've got some books here. I'm gonna have to read these in a future episode, but these are all, whoa. The real Barenziah, as opposed to Biography of Barenziah. Oh, interesting. Okay. Intriguing. All right. So, I'm obviously not going to start with 4 and 5. I'm going to try to find the other ones. But I've got a few other ones that I can read for future episodes. All of these are stuff I haven't read. Obviously, there's there's fishing maps, and there's like Letter from a Friend, and some of these. But most of these are books, though. Any of the books that I have read, I've given to Lydia. So she has... She has, these... I'm also giving her my cabbage. She had... Wait, do I have cabbage? Here, take it. Oh, I accidentally ate it. Whatever. Well... Okay, I ruined everything. I ate a cabbage. We don't speak of that. If you're watching this episode, don't tell the people who only watch the main episodes that I ate a cabbage. Because I'm hoarding them all. So these are ones that I read. I read all these, and then I've also read some other ones that I accidentally, threw somewhere. So I'm gonna have to go back and check which episode that was, and find where I tossed those books, and go get them. Wow, slamming doors out here. Crazy. Alright, well that's gonna be the end of this episode. Hope this was entertaining. Let me know if I should continue doing it like this, or if I should kind of sprinkle the books throughout the main episodes. I think it works to just kind of have episodes with a bunch of books, and then I can put the timestamps of each book. Like if you want to just hear specific books or whatever, you can look in the description for timestamps. And yeah, so I think this is a good way to do it. So I will see you all in the next mainline episode of Skyrim. Goodbye.